How's it going, everybody? This is Taba Drabo. Hope you're having another great day, and welcome back to another video. Alright, so I've talked about quite a bit of my job experiences in the past, especially with CVS and Walmart and ShopRite and a whole bunch of other places, and talked a little bit about how brutal some of those places are. However, there is one particular job that I had in the past that I do actually happen to be a little fond of. In fact, I'm wearing it right now. As I mentioned before, I previously worked at Lowe's for a little bit while I was searching for my job in the media marketing industry as a back-end employee working in the back end of the store. And I'm going to be honest with you, out of all the places that I've worked at in retail, I feel like this is probably one of the only ones where I felt like that I had a positive view of. And I'll tell you a little bit about that here. So for this video, I'll be sharing with you a little bit about my experience working at Lowe's as a back-end associate, a little bit about what my days there were like, and why I feel like I actually have a positive outlook overall in regards to my time there at that organization. So obviously by this time in January of 2021, I had just finished my studies at Kane and I was still working my once a week job at CVS, and obviously I needed to find some work just so that way I can at least have some extra money while I was trying to find my job in the media industry. And as much as I didn't want it to be in retail, my dad found a position open at Lowe's, which was the store in Union, New Jersey, and he told me to apply for it. And I'm going to be honest with you, I was really hesitant to do that because I really didn't want to have to go into another retail job straight out of college, but unfortunately I was really left with no other options. So I decided I would go there and try to apply for a back-end job there and see exactly what it would end up being like. One of the first things that I need to talk about is the interview. Now, I mentioned before, when I was working at Walmart, there were literally just barely any real interview questions. There was only just like one or two simple questions that I was asked by their HR coordinator, and then at the very end, I was just hired on the spot, and it just felt off right away. It was not like that at Lowe's. When I did my interview at Lowe's, they did it the usual way. I mean, the person that hired me there, he asked me some pretty tough questions, obviously, and I really had to think very hard just so that way I can be able to answer them efficiently in a very appropriate manner. I'm gonna be honest with you, just hearing those questions and then hearing myself say some of the answers to that one, I felt like that I had flubbed it just a little bit. However, apparently I did enough because as soon as I answered all those questions, they offered me the back-end position, which I decided to go ahead and accept just in case. And obviously I went for my drug test, and within a little bit of time, actually about a week almost, I got approved and I started that very same week, the very next week. And obviously the interview, you still got to be able to answer those questions efficiently, because that's really how you're going to be able to make an impression on your manager that you deserve an opportunity at that place. And again, interview questions for retail stores, they're basically going to be the same exact thing. I mean, it's obviously different once you go into your field because multiple other careers, you're going to have to answer different questions, but in retail, it's basically the same exact thing, you know, especially when you're working in warehouses and stuff like that. So the questions in there, they were difficult, but I feel like that I did enough just so that way I can be able to get that job. And really, that's just something that you need to at least keep in mind of in regards to, you know, like, for example, like what are certain places in the warehouse, and, you know, what do you use in regards to certain equipment and stuff like that. As long as you at least have some knowledge of that, even if you admit that you don't have enough of it, as long as you at least have some knowledge of it, I think you'll probably be just fine. Now, obviously, my job at a back-end associate, usually what I did was that I would work at the very back end, usually away from everything that's happening in the middle of the store, you know, all the shopping and all that stuff. And really my job there was to just unload all the trucks full of all the products that would be sold in the stores. And this can range from, you know, like power tools, or, you know, like gardening equipment, and, you know, like even just lawn stuff and all of that stuff. You know, obviously any one of those things that are in that truck, every single part of that, we would have to unload literally out of that truck and onto the actual floor. Now, obviously it depends on how much is in the truck. Usually, sometimes we would have at least one truck, or sometimes there would be so much stuff that we end up actually having to do two trucks, which can sometimes be a little frustrating, but still, you know, this is something that I personally actually didn't mind, because usually I would be one that would be very mindful of time. Here, I didn't really have to worry about that, you know. Obviously, I could just spend a little bit more time, you know, just, you know, focusing on getting everything out, and I really even had to really check my phone to see what time it is, and by the time I was done, it was really already halfway through my entire shift. And it also can be a little bit grueling as well. There are some things that are in there that are really, really heavy, and because of that, you have to do some some real heavy duty equipment just so that way you can be able to get all of that stuff out there, like, like vehicle or equipment or something like that. It can be very, very tough to do with just 1 or 2 people in there. Sometimes, most of the time, we actually had to have like a line just to be able to get most of the stuff out, but when it goes to the bigger stuff, it would be like at least 3 or more people that would have to use like vehicle or equipment to get something like that. Again, as long as there's at least more people that are helping out there, the quicker that it can be done. And trust me, it really depends on how much is in that truck. And yeah, there were some days that I really enjoyed doing it, and then there were other days where if there's like a whole bunch of stuff, then man, it can be really grueling. That's just some things that I really do hate. It's just that sometimes you get like a whole truck full of stuff, and sometimes it just keeps going all the way to the back end and all of that stuff that you just have no idea when it's actually going to end. But ultimately, when it does become a sigh of relief. That's just the first half of my job, and then usually the very second half of my day, it would just be stocking. So usually when I'm doing the front end, that would be around at least 5 to 9 or somewhere around 5 to 10 early in the afternoon or in the evening. And then during the late night hours, and again, this takes place at least for the first part a little bit overnight, but ultimately it ends at 1 a.m. because usually that was how long that I was staying there for. Usually for the rest of the time there, whatever time I have left, I just stocked as many things as I possibly can, like I did when I was at CVS and then also at Walmart as well. So usually there's a little bit of stocking there, and again, as long as I had that zebra there, it made it a lot easier for me to be able to figure out which product goes where, and it definitely was a pretty good job. Now granted, obviously, there are still some things that I don't like about it, and I'll talk about it in just a little bit, but most of the time, it's actually a pretty good thing that I had a job like that, because like I said, I don't have to worry too much about time. Obviously, I get to do a whole lot of this without really looking at my phone to see what's going on, and really just keeps me in the groove. And not only that, it also gives me a bit of a workout as well. Like I said before, during this time, I was in the middle of my weight loss, and obviously, this helped me at least shed at least a couple more pounds and stuff like that, and really remain active as well, because I'm moving around quite a bit as well. Again, when it comes to the heavy stuff, it can get a little bit grueling, but usually it is pretty good for somebody that's looking to move around just a little bit. So yeah, overall, the environment, I definitely feel like that, it would be like your normal warehouse or something like that. Obviously, it feels a little bit good as well, just to be around in an area where it's really just all the tools and all that stuff, all of your construction stuff, everything in regards to your lawn equipment, your power tools and all that stuff. It definitely felt like just a regular warehouse in which, you were just going around and just getting everything all stuffed up. But sometimes, obviously, there are some challenges in regards to that. One of the things that I didn't like was, some of the stuff that they were playing, like music-wise. Now, obviously, as you all know, I do enjoy some, rock stuff and all that stuff. Here, they were playing like a whole bunch of like poppy stuff or something like that. That's not usually something that I would associate when it comes to, working in a warehouse or something like that. In fact, there was a time during the winter where there were really just only 11 to 12 songs playing, and it got really irritating after once in a while. And so really I just took my mind off of that and just focused on my work. I mean, I didn't really like some of the music that they were playing, but then again, it's a retail place. What are you gonna do about that? And then there were some times whenever I was starting to unload things and actually bringing them out into the store, there were some customers that were coming there really just asking me, hey, where can I go to find this product, or where exactly can I go to really get this kind of equipment and stuff like that. Dude, I work literally in the back end. This is where I usually am at during most of the day. I don't know exactly where mostly everything is. I mean, I can tell you exactly where some things are, but I'm not a communicative guy. I mean, I don't really like some of that. I thought that working as a back-end associate would meant for at least the first half of the day until the store closes, working in the back end, getting everything unloaded, and then obviously once it actually does close, you go in and start doing your stocking and all that stuff. I mean, obviously you still have to communicate with some customers and all that stuff, but I really don't like that. And so I just feel like that, like if you're working as a back-end associate, that's where you're gonna have to be. I just don't like really having to answer some of those questions because, again, this is not my specialty. I don't usually know construction stuff very well, and I really don't like having to share some of that info because I really don't know exactly where everything goes in this actual store. So I'm sorry, I'm not the best person to answer that, and I just didn't like that. But outside of that, most of the rest of the experience there was actually pretty good. A lot of the employees that I met with, including my boss at the time as well, they were actually some pretty nice people. I actually was able to make some pretty cool friendships with them, and also make some pretty good memories as well. Share a little bit of a laugh or two, and we were usually like joke around a little bit sometimes while we were unloading the truck as well. And there were also sometimes that we were also playing some music as well in the back end, which was usually something that usually would never be allowed in any of the other stores as well. And so obviously that's a good thing. I do feel like sometimes that is obviously just a chill environment, obviously, because you're getting to work with some pretty cool people, and obviously, just having a little bit of fun as well. You get to really spend some time with them, learn a little bit more about each other, and also really just, work with each other and just, have some fun. But that's as long as everything is obviously good during the day. And most of the time, that was exactly where I was in. I mean, there were a lot of good days, but also there were a lot of bad days that were going on as well. Now, one of the things that I have to mention is that just like most of my other retail jobs at the time, this was a part-time job. And so obviously, you would expect that most of the time, it will only be like 4 or 5 hours. Not this one though. Here, I actually had to work full-time hours. And I do mean that. At Lowe's, they will make you do that. Trust me, Lowe's actually happens to have a vicinity to have part-time workers work full-time hours. And so obviously, there were at least several weeks where I actually had to go the full 40-hour work week like most other workplaces will usually do. The thing is that I'm only doing part-time pay as a result of that. And so obviously, that's one of the things that I kind of question as well. I mean, if you're gonna have me do full-time hours as a part-time employee, shouldn't you at least pay me full-time pay? I mean, I feel like that's something that really should be put into consideration. Because of the fact early on that I was working 40 hours a week, I really thought that this was a full-time job at first. It wasn't until I checked online that I saw that I was part-time that I realized that, okay, so I'm working full-time hours, however, I'm a part-time employee. I really feel like that if I'm doing full-time hours, it really should be full-time pay. I don't really know why this practice exists at Lowe's, but I really feel like that if you're going to have people work 40 hours a week, it needs to be a full-time position. And so obviously I feel like that if I was going to do that much, it should have been full-time pay. Otherwise, I should have probably been doing like 20 or 24 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week if you were going to pay me part-time pay. I mean, I didn't like that as such, but at the same time, obviously it kept my mind off of things a little bit. And then there were some times, obviously, where in the middle of that week, because as I said, I was working part-time at the time. As long as you were at least working 24 hours a week, you were good, obviously. And so obviously there were some times where I was planning to go 40 hours, where unfortunately they had to cut down to 24 hours because I was working so many hours every single week. And really, there was just so much activity going on at the time as well that, they feel like that they need to give you a little bit of a rest or something like that. I mean, obviously, it's 24 hours, you gotta work, best you can during those 24 hours, but obviously, it does suck sometimes when you have to have your hours cut as a result of, like a lack of work that's happening around there or, for some other things as well. Again, I don't understand why they do this. I mean, if you're working full-time, you need to be full-time pay. So if you're a part-timer working 40 hours a week and earning part-time pay, it doesn't really make sense in my opinion. I feel like it probably should have been at the very least full-time. And yeah, obviously one of the other things is that because you're working in retail as well, you obviously have to work weekends as well, which is something that I didn't like. Obviously you have to work your Saturdays and Sundays. It is a must in a part-time position and in a retail position altogether. But again, that's something that you are going to have to go through in this job. And obviously that's something that I had to deal with during the majority of my time there. And so, obviously, again, it just depends on, what your schedule is like and what is happening there during that time. You just gotta find your way to be able to adapt to it. But yeah, otherwise, there isn't really much negative that I can say otherwise. Everybody was pretty cool to me. I felt like that, I did have some fun there during my time there at Lowe's. And, obviously, I just felt like that this was really that one retail place that I worked at where I left there with actually a real positive outlook, obviously. And if I really felt like it, I possibly could have went in there full time and tried to see, what I can do there for a little bit of time. If things in marketing and media, if I wasn't able to find a job at that then, that really didn't work out. But fortunately, as I said before, I was ultimately able to find my media job. And so ultimately, I did have to drop this one so that way I can take my job at the New Jersey Symphony, which was a shame because like I said before, I really did enjoy that job, obviously. I really felt like that, that was really the one retail place that I worked at where I felt like that I really was enjoying it. And I just felt like that, if I could have spent more time there to work there during the evening hours instead of, just having to really go back and forth all the time between multiple jobs, because again, that was what I was doing during the time that I was trying to find my job. I was working multiple jobs literally at the same time with very little sleep. I would have been able to do that. But again, once you ultimately get into your career job, that's when ultimately things need to be prioritized towards that one. And so unfortunately, I did have to drop this one, and I do miss that place quite a bit. But yeah, I do personally enjoyed my experience at Lowe's. I definitely felt like like that, like overall, it was a positive experience on my outwork. A lot better than CVS and Walmart, obviously, and along with most of my other places that I've worked at. And then really just, like I felt like it was the one retail place that I really personally enjoyed. And so as much as it was a shame to drop that, again, I'm just still enjoying things here at the New Jersey Symphony. And as long as this is the path that I'm taking, I'm just very happy with where I'm at here at the marketing media industry. And I'm hoping that I continue to rise over there at that book. Now again, for those that are ultimately going to go into retail, you really need to think about what kind of place that you want to work at. If you want to work at a warehouse, you really need to consider the possibilities of what could happen at a place like Lowe's or at the Home Depot, which is of course its closest rival. Obviously there are a lot of positives that go in there, and then also a lot of negatives, which of course a few of those I did share in this video today. But overall, I definitely feel like that as long as you at least know what you're doing, you could possibly end up getting a good career out of that. Ultimately, maybe become a store manager at some point at Lowe's or the Home Depot if you decide that you want to pursue that area full time. Now, I'm not saying that you should go to Lowe's. Now, obviously, if you're like a college student and you really need to make that money, or if you're struggling to find something and you really just need something to really make that dough while you're trying to go for your job and your ultimate career choice, then yes, I definitely feel like that you really should consider at least trying Lowe's or something like that. Maybe not a back-end associate, maybe as a cashier, or maybe at some aisle or area where you could work at a certain area where you can talk about construction or warehouse stuff and all of that stuff. But as long as you at least know what you're doing, you could be fine. If you're not a construction guy like I am and you really don't know a whole lot about all the stuff that's there at Lowe's, then I would not personally recommend that. But again, as long as you know what you're doing there, you will be fine at Lowe's. And I definitely feel like that you could definitely do some good things there, and that's exactly what I felt like I was doing there. Yes, there were some things that I didn't like there, but overall I enjoyed the people that I worked with there. I definitely enjoyed all the stuff that was going on there, and as much as I hated to drop that place after 8 months when I got my job in New Jersey Symphony, as I said before, there are so many retail jobs that I worked at before I got my job in New Jersey Symphony that I really just felt stressed out over. This was really the one where I felt like that I had some sort of positive outlook there. I did enjoy my time there at Lowe's while I was there, and I definitely feel like that, overall, I did have an overall positive experience of my time there. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you like to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when my latest video is released. Comment below for future suggestions for all my videos, whether it's blogs, projects, or challenges, you name it, leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to make them. And as always, follow me on my social media. All the links are in the description below. That's gonna do it for this video. I hope you're having another great day. And as always, I hope to see you all again in another video very soon. So long, everybody.